Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about the wall of text. We're talking about things that affect you that are very subtle, that appear passive, but do long-term damage. For example, your profile can be used against you in court. All right? So your profile, your posts, your text messages, photographs, your stance on topics can be used against you in court, and they have been used against people in court. So imagine you've been called to the stand to testify, and you're ready, and you feel you have a rock solid argument, and it's an open and shut case. You're surprised when you find out that the judge chooses to dismiss your confession because your character is questionable, because they have gone and they used these search engines to look up salacious information about you, or they've taken conversations completely out of linguistic context and have spun them to paint you in a very sinister image. And so what we're talking about really is how there are companies like Google that when you type in a search, and we'll say black girls, for example, what comes up, it's highly sexualized imagery and ideas, as opposed to a search that brings results that are benign or bland or harmless to anybody who's observing this. So in these situations, Google wants to shirk any responsibility and say that this is what people are searching for, and that's why it comes up, and they're not responsible for the search results. Well, that's a completely cowardly stance, because you're telling me that you have a product that you take no responsibility for, even though you are responsible for training and coding the AI that will bring back these results. But see, when the Jewish community had the same issue, and you type in Jew, and years ago, 90% of the immediate search results were anti-Semitic. And so the larger Jewish community went and approached Google with court documents, cease and desist documents, making them alter the searches so that they were painting Jews in a more positive light. But nothing of that sort has happened for black people or Asian people or anybody else. The Jews had the deep pockets to go and hire the attorneys to go and get this done. Now, I'm not faulting them for that. I'm actually applauding them for their efforts. In this situation, they addressed the problem right away, and they got a resolution that appealed to them. But yet still, when you type in things like the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, you get all these derogatory images. Now, you can say what you will about her, but that's still a black woman with children. I remember the climate when Barack was the president, and we had a black first lady, and the first family were black kids, and there were all these racist, overly racist, bigoted, prejudiced type of imagery, and you would see it on picket signs, you would see it on Facebook posts, you would see it all over the place on social media.
So what makes it complicated is they're public figures, and they're taking advantage of that to display their bigotry. See, some of these people were bigots to begin with.
But here's the thing, though. Google and other search engines and these social media platforms, they want to use the First Amendment. See, all these companies from Silicon Valley and those types like to use the First Amendment.
You said some deep shit, Roscoe.
Hold on. But see, they want to use the First Amendment, but they forget that the other part of the First Amendment is the right to assembly.
Oh, that's not what I was talking about.
Hold it. But here's the thing, though. They want to use the First Amendment. They want to hide behind that as long as it suits them.
Yes, that's my point. Because you can't use First Amendment.
Their view is that it's rules for thee and not for me. They own some Gavin Newsom bullshit.
Yeah, so they use the First Amendment for themselves. But if you're on one of their sites and you try to claim First Amendment, they're like, "Oh, this is private. You can't. You don't have the right to a First Amendment on my website." But they see that's the hypocrisy of it. that the First Amendment is they use the First Amendment to get out of trouble, but they won't use the First Amendment for you to post what you feel like posting when you're talking about COVID, vaccines, anti-Semitic, hate speech, LBGT, all those keywords.
Right. And they forget that their product is there to serve the people and not the other way around. See, this is what I'm talking about. This type of subversion, this type of beta male, passive aggressive oppression through technology, right? Or these oppressive algorithms. They want you to see the world in a certain way that suits them. As opposed to, well, when I search for things, I search very specifically. I don't just type in a broad search. I type very specifically because I understand how these SEOs work, right? These search engines, they were created and built on code. And that code was written by people. And if those people have a very specific political, social, economic, racial outlook, it will reflect in the products they create. So, for example, Facebook was sued for when jobs are posted on Facebook, black people who lived in a certain zip code would not see these. These were hidden from black people. So if you lived on the west side of Atlanta, if you lived in the metro Atlanta, you probably didn't see these types of jobs, right?
Certain jobs would not pop up for you because of your zip code.
Right. Or if you're on the east side of Detroit, you didn't see these. Or if you're on the east side of Cleveland, you didn't see these. Or if you're in South Central, you didn't see these. Or if you're in North Omaha, you didn't see these. You know, these jobs were clearly being hidden from black people. This was pointed out, enlarged, and then used in court. Oh, they've been sued bunches of times.
But see, this goes back to the first thing you said. There's certain things that are benign that if you post that, you could be a dick, you could be saying something derogatory, but if you were to shoot somebody or something were to happen, they would take this little benign statement from your social media and run with it, which has happened. In fact, in one of the shooting classes I took, that was one of the first things they said. It was like, look, I'm not telling you to shut down your social media. I'm telling you, beware what you put on there, because if you say kill all such and such or to hell with them all, and then you could have a justified shooting. What my brother was explaining to you, you could have a justified shooting, self-defense. This person came on my property. They threatened me and my family, and they had a weapon. I did what I had to do. But then all of a sudden, you're in court. You think that they're going to throw it out. Then all of a sudden, well, on January 3rd on Facebook right here, you have a post saying that blah, 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 blah. Well, there's another thing that you need to worry about. There was a cop. And of course, they love getting their ARs engraved with certain things. And this cop had something engraved on his AR, like, all towel heads this, or kill, or death to whatever, or he had like a Punisher symbol on there. Because I got a Punisher symbol on one of my guns. And sure enough, it goes to court. He shot somebody, goes to court, and everything was good. Like, hey, this cop was good. This was justified. Then it goes to civil court. They bring up the statement on the AR where it says infidels die or some shit like that. Literally something to that effect. So please forgive me for not knowing exactly what it said. But that statement right there, he lost in civil court, and he could have lost in criminal court, because that gives the impression that your mind was made up to shoot somebody. And this is also an argument I've had for years with people that nobody wants to understand. I'm a gun guy. But the reason you buy guns, entertainment, yeah, but it's to shoot somebody. So when a situation arises where you get to shoot somebody, I'm sorry, I do want to. I don't want to take a life, but I damn sure want to use my gun for what it was intended for, and that's to protect me. So you got people who create situations of negativity. Whether like is Zimmerman following Trayvon home? This is something that I had to explain to white people. When you're having that conversation, they don't want to have the whole conversation. Neighborhood watch, this, that, and other. You do realize following somebody is an act of aggression. And tell me it ain't. Oh, yeah, no, it's not. It's not. If you follow somebody, if I followed your daughter home right now, what would you say? You would lose your damn mind. Somebody follows you. That's an act of aggression.
There's a dead guy named Ahmaud Arbery that will tell you that it is an act of aggression.
Following
Trayvon
somebody,
Martin.
Act of aggression. When a white person pursues a black person, especially, like I said, I'm not going to front like black people never broke the law. I'm not going there. The big one in St. Louis, the one in
Michael Brown.
Michael Brown. So they bring up that video of him when he robbed stole some blunts or something from the store earlier that day. Not completely unrelated. So you
But
have the
in
author
that sense, it's an attempt, even though it's taken completely out of context.
assassination of
It's
character.
meant to paint you in a sinister light.
Yes, and it's an assassination of character. But like I said, that's not what we're talking about this time. We're really talking about the fact that they push these little agendas, very subtle, but they're very aggressive. And their subtlety is part of it, but they're aggressive in their subtlety. And like I said, what I'm trying to tell you is that following somebody is an act of aggression. Sitting here pushing your principles on somebody, like, oh, you can't say those things, but then at the same time, I'm in court saying First Amendment. I have the right to say this. I'm protected under the First Amendment, but the people using your service aren't. What kind of shit is that? That's that hypocrisy. That's that, like he just said, for we and not for thee, man. I'm just letting you know that little things, you got to be careful about these little things you did in the past. It's not fair when you got an athlete who just went to the NFL and you bring up some shit he said on Facebook when he was in high school. Now, yeah, I think Jews are this and I think women are that. He was a kid. Or somebody was taunting this dude and they were having a heated conversation and he says, but he was still a kid. You know, when you were 4, you went to bed once or twice. You don't bring that up because you understand that that's in the past and that the person you were then, you've matured. I'm not saying you're not the same person. I'm saying that you've grown and evolved. So it's not fair to run back when somebody, look, I'm sorry for the record. I did some bad things in high school to girls. I grabbed some butts. I did some things like that. But if I decide to run for office, what if this chick comes out and says, after gym class, Riddick's grabbed my butt and I've been traumatized for 46 years. And I'm like, really? That was, yes, I admit that was poor judgment on my part. I grabbed your butt. I shouldn't have done that. We were exploring our sexuality. We were young, blah, blah, blah. But that should not stop that man from having a career later on. That should not stop that woman from, what she did in high school should not affect her 30 years, 40 years later. That's all I'm saying.
This show was shadow banned on YouTube. Episode number 83 of this show was shadow banned.
Whoa, tell them about it.
So the show, the funny part about the show and the reason why we were banned are completely unrelated. So in the show, we talk about pedophiles and, how despicable pedophiles are and, how pedophiles use their influence, if they have any,
yes,
and how to utilize networks to get small children and abuse them. So we covered that briefly in that episode. And what got the show flagged was I put the word pedos, P-E-D-O-S. I put that in the show description. Now, if you notice when you watch the show now, or you look at the show when you're about to watch it, there are no descriptions. I have purposely removed all descriptions from the shows now. There's no more descriptions going forward since episode 83. Because the reason is that we're switching to a new platform. And we're going to be offering a streaming version of the show where you can pay $4 every month and you get a full 2-hour episode. So when you watch it on YouTube, starting with episode number 105, you're only watching the first hour. And so when you subscribe to our RSS feed, you have access to the full 2-hour show. But the reason why we're doing that is because there are things that we want to say that we will not be silenced by anybody. And we want you to get the full, straight, no chaser, 100% funk. Okay? And so when they shadow ban us, let me back up and just tell you what shadow banning really is. Because there's some of you out there who probably really don't understand what the word means. So shadow meaning stealth and banning meaning to restrict you or remove some of your content from a social media platform, such as YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And so that episode number 83, it was removed. It was the crazy part about it is like there was no warning. It was just taken down. And the reason that they cited was that we were distributing false medical information. I'm like, wait a minute.
That shit wasn't even about that.
You didn't even listen to this episode, right? So then this takes me into another topic, and that is CCM, Commercial Content Management. CCM is the act of having a person or AI monitor social media platforms and edit them for the purpose of making them palatable for the widespread public. So the problems with this is that a platform like YouTube gets 400 hours of content per minute. Let that sink in for a second. 400 hours per minute. They're getting videos, audio, all the time. That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with. And so they then allocate all this content to a group of people to filter it and watch it and curate it, to like prevent the bad stuff from getting through, like sexual molestation of children or anybody, lewd and illicit videos, beheadings. The people that have been working in these positions, these CCMs, these commercial content managers, they're not full-time employees, right? So in the structure of a tech company like YouTube, you have the software engineers who are coders, right? And then you have everybody else underneath that. So if you don't have on these white collar jobs, then you're a blue collar person, and you have a short 1 to 2 year cycle with that company because you're meant to cycle out for several reasons. One of the reasons is because the job of being a CCM is so emotionally taxing that most people cannot handle it beyond a year. So there was a story about a guy. He was a CCM, and he said for 8 hours a day, it was like sitting in a pile of filth, like swimming in sewage for 8 hours a day. He would be bombarded with the most lewd, disgusting videos, people vomiting, like people putting stuff in their ass, all types of weird stuff they had to like just turn away, stuff they couldn't upload anyway. But he said that he was very optimistic at first when he started working this job. And then he was interviewed 8 months later, and he said he had developed a drinking habit and how he didn't want to talk about work when he would go out with people from work or even with his friends who didn't work for the company. But he said he hated to talk about work because it brought back everything that he sought to compartmentalize while he was at work. And so he had PTSD for sure, because he was once sitting on the couch with his girlfriend and they're watching TV, and his girlfriend starts to, make sexual advances. And this is his girlfriend. They've been, together for some time, so they're familiar with each other. He then sees an image that he saw earlier in that day, a disturbing image from that day, and he stiff arms her and pushes her away. It was a visceral reaction based off of something that he saw that triggered him earlier in the day. So these people, these CCMs, they are not allowed any type of psychological counseling on the job, because it would somehow maybe impair their readiness or their coherent behavior. See, their coherent behavior is paramount. They have to be lucid the entire time. If you show any sign of weakness and you're not fit for duty, you can't do the job. But a job like that, no doubt, requires some type of psychological counseling. But these people aren't full-time employees, so they're not, entitled to things like free sushi or free smoothies or the rock climbing wall that they have at work. All this bullshit they have these tech companies. I've been inside when I've seen all this stuff. But these poor people, basically, that are working there, they're they're pretty much the same as the janitors and the garbage men of the company. And so these people, they're either in a place like Iowa, which is middle America, where they have, the wholesome, Midwestern values, which is why they always have the Iowa caucus every 4 years when the president's running. And then they have a place in the Philippines, or there's a place in India, right? And the people that they hire are recent college graduates who are optimistic, and they are malleable psychologically, but they're at this age where right before their frontal cortex has completely formed and matured, they're the most malleable. They're at their weakest point because they're not confident truly, and they don't have enough life experience to make the best decisions. But yet they have just enough to say yay or nay on these cat videos or whatever videos are being uploaded to YouTube at that time. So these situations are unique in human history because we're creating the content for this product, for this machine, for this service, and it's being authored by us, but it's being curated by people, and then it's also being curated by AI. Now, here's the problem. You can say something like, okay, there's certain things that are linguistically unique to the black community. And if you say, man, I'm about to go blow up that bathroom, everybody knows what you mean, right? If you're not part of that culture, if you're outside of that culture, if you're not American,
taken out of context.
It can easily be taken out of context. You can say, if you're from another foreign culture or country, you hear an American say to them like, oh, that guy's about to go commit a terrorist crime. No, he's not. He's probably had too much McDonald's and he's about to go take a big, massive dump. But the problem is that a lot of these people that are filtering these things, that are CCMs, they don't have the right cultural context and they don't understand black vernacular, right? And let's keep it all the way 100 real. Black people has given the world culture, music, everything, okay? And language still to this day. I mean, do you remember like a year ago when all those black influencers boycotted TikTok and
Yep.
the little white girls in Arizona, they had no dances to do. They had no new content.
That was a real thing.
That was a real fucking thing. It was dry as fuck without black people on TikTok. I don't give a shit about TikTok, but I'm just using that to paint an example. Like, it's real. Like, we influence the entire world. But the dark side of that is the controllers and the ideology of the people at these tech companies. There was a guy named James Moore about 4 years ago. He wrote this paper and it lit the tech world on fire. He basically said women and people of color do not possess the mental aptitude to be coders and software engineers. And this type of mentality is not rare at these tech companies. So it's part of the reason why the FBI hires Mormons. They have a white conservative background and they're part of a cult. And so once you get in these tech companies, you see this cult type of thinking, right? Either you're with us or you're against us. Either you believe this or you're off the island. And so these situations like ours, with the show being taken off for that episode 83, that was an example of either a person or AI who did not understand the context, or they were working at the behest of people, powerful people within that company that like kiddie porn.
That's disgusting, but it's the truth. You have people who make decisions based on other things. And even the excuse they gave, I think the biggest thing that you got to recognize, the excuse they gave was we were giving messed up medical information, blah blah blah. That was an excuse to take us off. But the fact that episode wasn't even about medical.
No,
Even with
no,
other,
but the reason they use that is because that's a blanket excuse to take
it's all
anybody off of
it's
social media
all
right
it's
now.
all encompassing. It's one of those all encompassing
It
things.
happened
Like
during COVID, and that was a good enough example. They could just put this wet blanket on this thing that they figured, oh, it's a boilerplate excuse. It should work, and we'll see if they fight back or not.
but it's even more frustrating because, like I said, we've had episodes that talk way more about medical information. But the bottom line we're trying to point is that this freedom of speech thing is really delicate. This freedom of expression is super delicate right now. And like I said, when you kind of learn what's the word I'm looking for? When you learn the game plan that these places use, the same way the black folks use the civil rights movement and a grassroots organization, and we worked our ways up. Churches were a big part of that. Yada yada yada. Those are the same things that got shut down during COVID. Pay attention. They attack what you do, but then they do it themselves. And they have, in these large organizations, they have secret meetings. They have all this different stuff. And so what they accuse you of, they're actually doing. That's what makes it really difficult when you pay attention. What they say that you're doing is bad, they do it all the time. They have meetings with alcohol, and they talk about these big agendas, and they come up with plans for people, and people don't even get to have a say so in the matter. Yeah, pay attention.
So, shadow banning, it happens in other ways. So there was a conversation I was having with a person on Facebook. And this was in the message. It was in the messenger, Facebook Messenger. And this guy was a Navy veteran. And the crazy part is that he was at sea off the coast of San Diego within a mile of the USS Nimitz on another ship when the Tic Tac event happened. And he and I were having a discussion about this. And the discussion was only about the Tic Tac. Dude, within 5 minutes, I got a message that's telling me this conversation has been shut down for unauthorized, it's, what did they say? They said it was an unauthorized discussion or something about using volatile terms or some shit like that. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
But that's old, because they did that to me a long time ago. I haven't seen them do that recently. But literally, they'll shut you, like you're having a conversation with somebody, you're going back and forth, then you can't access the conversation, and you look at the post, and everybody's on there except you and that other. Everybody's comments are on there except you and the other person that were kind of going at it. It's real sketchy how they explain it until you experience it. It's hard to explain.
But okay, in my instance, there was no terse text.
Words.
There was no terse conversation. It was two friends discussing an event that happened 16 years before. And it was odd because there were keywords that are programmed into this algorithm to scrape and scrub conversations in Facebook Messenger. And I guess when Tic Tac came up, it just shut it right down. And I'm like, dude, that is weird. So, but the crazy part about it is this happened during the year of UFO disclosure by Congress and the Pentagon. I'm like, well, okay, everything should be okay because now it's out in the public that this event happened. This is like 4 years after that New York Times article came out, right? On December 16th, 2017. And so we're being shadow banned by Facebook for having a discussion about something that's public knowledge. But it wasn't the fact that it was public knowledge. It was the fact that that guy was there and he was about to divulge some unclassified shit or classified shit. Dude, crazy, man. Crazy. See, okay, this is exactly what we're talking about. There is this invisible hand that shows itself from time to time.
It rears its ugly head, at the weirdest times, but this is about control. Don't ever
100%.
get it twisted.
100%. And a narrative. When you start steering away from the official narrative, people get pissed off. When you start driving attention to things that people don't like to hear about, they will find a way to divert it. I'll give you a perfect example. Comet Ping Pong. And how there was all this attention about this pedophile ring that involved presidents, that involved the Secretary of the State at the time. Powerful people.
Washington. People having what was that? The sex abuse. I can't think of the term right now. Flashbacks,
dude,
and all that kind of stuff.
The CBS reporter, the reporter of the CBS affiliate station, was fired because they aired that story. So why would you fire the reporter and not the producer? Maybe both of them got fired. I don't know. But the point is that when you draw attention to things that they don't like, okay, they don't like it when you approach them in the street and take them to task. They hate it. Nancy Pelosi she is a habitual line stepper. That's the chick that was all about the masks, and now she goes to the salon not wearing a mask to get her hair done in a state where hair salons supposed to be shut down, right?
Don't even give a damn.
Dude, AOC, okay? AOC just mask, screaming about masks, and she's down in Miami, and she got it. She was in Miami with no mask, free balling, and now she got the vid.
But again, do as I say, not as I do.
Rules for thee, not for me. Because Gavin Newsom was at the French Laundry restaurant with no mask on, eating out in a time where no restaurants are supposed to be open. Rules for thee, not for me.
Look, my point about that, we're talking about politicians, but let's talk about the people at work.
All right.
The people that you see every day.
Bring it.
Yeah. See, I'm not going to be particular. I'm not talking about particulars, but you have people going out of town who, we should wear masks. They're all in your face. Can't go to the zoo, can't do this. But they'll take a vacation someplace nice. Don't mask up. Don't do nothing. Come back and affect one person in the family, or talking to you at work and didn't quarantine. Remember that shit? You know, what happened to that? Remember, if you went out of town, you were supposed to quarantine. That shit went by the wayside when they didn't have enough people to cover them jobs. But the bottom line is that those exact same people that were so hard on you wearing a mask, they're the main ones breaking rules when it came to quarantine because they didn't want to miss work.
I mean, it's like, like Catholics, man. Like, they're the biggest whores. Yeah, but yet, they're always about, rules and regulations, and they're doing the most fucking.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's because when you repress people like that, the craziest shit comes out. Look at the Japanese and their sexual fantasies. All this is weird stuff.
Monsters and shit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, but the reason why they have tentacle porn is because you couldn't show dicks in Japanese porn, or you couldn't draw dicks in Japanese porn. And so he said, all right, well, it looks like a dick. He said a tentacle. So he started using tentacle. So whenever you see tentacle porn, it's supposed to be dicks.
Hold it. But see, I'm an old school anime head. The movie you need to watch is Legend of the Overfiend.
Yeah.
See, what they did was he flipped the script, and he made the tentacles actual dicks, and it destroys Japan. But of course, I'm a perv, so forgive me. But if you check out Legend of the Overfiend, this is going to explain what he's talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, what I'm saying is that this invisible cuck, passive, aggressive oppression is what happens when nerds take over the world. Okay. And so instead of being in your face with it, it's very, off to the side, stealthy.
Do you remember when we were kids, they used to say, I remember your dad was like, lawyers have taken over the world. When you're kids, you don't get that. But this is what you're talking about when the nerds take over. When you got these super educated people who will not confront you, they won't fight you. They won't take their shirt off and let's go at it, bro. No, they'll nitpick you and it's called paper cut you. There's 10,000 paper cuts. They will hit you with injunctions.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yes, that's what they're doing because they don't have the ability to fight you. But that's what these nerdy pedophile motherfuckers are. these Senate motherfuckers, these councilmen, and those kind of people. They'll fuck around and sue you for saying something, but if you say, but then they're off doing this crazy shit with kids. The Lolita Express, and we talk about that wasn't the first time there was an island. Listen to one of our old podcasts. That's not the first island retreat that senators and powerful people would go to that had children supplied to them. That's not the first time.
Let's talk about money.
Hold up. Let's talk about what you just said earlier. How did they bust the reporter for putting this thing out, but they don't do the producer? How about the fact that they bust the pimp, but they don't bust the Johns? That's a term that you always hear, pimps and Johns. You hear pimps and hoes, but the Johns, the ones that they used the service.
Ghislaine Maxwell just wrapped up her trial, and
she's guilty. Say it.
Yeah, she's guilty. She's guilty. But the woman that was railing so hard against her, and her beef was with her and Prince Andrew, she won the ruling. And what happened, I think 2 days ago, Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys will no longer fight to keep the names of 8 powerful people private. So, yeah, it's about to go down. So now what's going to happen, hold on, is that these 8 powerful people that were once unnamed will now be named. But see what they're doing is, this is a play. This is to let you know that, hey, we're going to run interference, but we're going to give you some time. We're going to give you some time to get lawyered up and try and protect yourself and try and buy some media outlets to spin it. But we're going to come for you. Right? So basically, they're like saying, look, we're going to call the cops. We're going to give you 30 minutes to run.
The other thing is, like, look, we all know my client is guilty of something, but if y'all wasn't using her service, she wouldn't be guilty of shit. You dig that? Like, before she existed, y'all was already doing this nasty shit.
Right. But see, in the case, they put all the blame on Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, because he did.
Right. They basically, like, they switched the roles. It was a role reversal where she was the side piece and he was the mastermind. When in actuality, she was the mastermind and he was the assistant. He was the henchman. Right? Mm-hmm. But what it was is that she was the brains and he was the face man of the operation. He was the one that was shaking hands with everybody and setting up all the different meetings and everything. But she was the one who really put everything together because she comes from a family that practices dark arts and the art of sexual blackmail.
Well, but that goes back to the espionage part of her father in the history. But like I said, the point we're making, back to the original point, you got to understand that these people who are governing us are guilty of way worse sins, way worse crimes. This is when people get pissed off when you get a parking ticket, right? But you hear a gunshot. See, I've grown up in a black neighborhood. One of the most annoying things that happened. My city tried to do what they were doing down south. And so I'm walking into a convenience store, and there's like 5 police officers in front. And they're actually handing out like a flyer that has all these like people with warrants on it and shit like that, right? Like, or people they're looking for. While I'm walking into the place where I live, there are gunshots in the distance. None of the motherfuckers went toward the gunshots. None of them. So I'm like, you literally heard a crime being committed, but you didn't go to. You're Superman. You're Batman, right? You got your armor on. You go towards it. So
you run to the fire, not away from the fire.
Now, on the flip side, I've been baking at the same place for like 40 years off of Ames. There's a cop that he works there, like, on his off time, whatever. There was the apartment. You know what apartments I'm talking about? There was a shooting at that apartment behind it. He leaves his post at the bank and went to do something about it. I give that man credit. He said, he talked to me. He was like, hey, I found some 45 shells. And he said, these kids are running around with 9s. And he said, these were unused 45 shells in that yard. So he's like, he went over there like, oh, there's a shooting. That's what you're supposed to do. So you guys are so worried about getting fugitives and handing out pamphlets that you're not doing the core competency. So That's what makes it difficult when it comes to these politicians and these companies, these heads of these companies. And the same thing that made them successful is the same thing that makes them a perverted piece of shit. They're not used to hearing no. They work their ass off. They do all this shit to conceal what their real issue is. I got mommy daddy issues. I want this. I want to be peed on. They do all this fucking shit. And they have money so they can conceal how fucked up they really are. All this money is a buffer to the rest of society. That's what it is. Money doesn't make you better, but it gives you the ability to hide your shortcomings. A lot of little dick motherfuckers doing big things because they're not getting pussy. So let me create a situation where I can. And here's a problem with minorities, because we're black. Part of sexual conquest is part of the white man's issue. Like, if you paid attention, we know about all the sex that was going on with slaves. We know about how these motherfuckers would have kids in the house and they were doing terrible things to them. We've seen it over the years. How is this any different? You have to recognize pattern of misbehaviors of certain demographics, and when you realize that, because you're thinking that's what they did to these slave children was something in the past, but what you understand is that they've been able to conceal it for the years and years and years. They're going to Africa, they're going to Brazil, they're getting kids, and you think the person's a maid because they're undocumented. They're not a maid, they're a fucking sex slave, boy or girl, that kind of shit. And so what I'm saying is that having a lot of money is a status symbol, but what are they doing with it? They're paying people off. They're doing all kinds of fucked up shit. Hey, what about that congressman? What about that senator that was in California? He got caught with the two black gay guys, and one of them ended up dead and shit. Or was he a businessman?
Nothing ever happened.
Nothing happened. Like, you heard about the first one getting killed. The second one you ain't hear shit about. Or how many times have you heard these little aides up in D.C. that both parties end up disappearing? Oh, she's been missing for 6 months. They find her in a park. You mean to tell me ain't nobody found this bitch in the park this whole time? No. She was killed, put in the freezer, and she was silenced. And then all of a sudden, you toss her body sometime later on. She wasn't sitting in that park under them leaves for 9 months. What I'm saying is that these evil people in charge have honed their skills over the years. They've only gotten better. What hurts us is that the general populace had a higher moral compass and was more intelligent. The problem is those people didn't mind being racist. they minded you fucking with society and their money, but they didn't mind their racism. And so as people get more money, they actually became more racist. They would hide, I don't like black people, but all of a sudden there's all these gravies running around here. Who's that old senator? Remember that the biggest Democrat from down south? He still used the N-word.
Strom Thurmond.
Strom Thurmond, and he has a black daughter. Put her through school, took very good care of her. Yeah, these people are built on secrets. Now, like I said, we don't care about consensual sex. We care about this fucking contrived shit where you're doing fucking rituals and shit. And so many people don't understand. You look. I mean,
listen. If you want to go and practice sex magic, all right, do it.
Consenting. Nobody cares.
But don't tell people you're a Christian, though.
Oh yeah. Or how about the fact that so many of these secret societies, they fucking each other in the ass. You know what I'm saying? Like okay.
That's a common thread. Homosexuality and sodomy is a common thread in a lot of these pagan secret societies.
That exact same man.
But hold on, but if you say something about it though, then it's like the whole anti-Semitic thing. So you telling me I can't even talk about it and address it without you to like label me as something? No, man, no. I'm pointing out shit that y'all do. I'm not saying all y'all motherfuckers is evil. I'm talking about y'all motherfuckers that's butt fucking, that's fucking kids and chopping off heads and drinking blood. That is a weird connection.
Well, but the issue is they try to put it back on you like you the bad person. You have a problem with gays. I ain't saying nothing about being gay. I'm saying that you are sitting here doing sex acts. You're communing with each other. You're straight up worshiping somebody else. But in your common life, you're wearing a cross. I'm upstanding.
You're living a double life.
Yeah, which that's fine. I get it, but don't do evil shit. Like, look, I'll be the first to tell you. We all got, hey, you like porn, you like this. I used to be a strip club guy. That's fine, but I have never I'm not going to force anybody. I'm not going to use my money to like, nah, here's $100, going to do some strange for some change. No, you still got to have morals. The idea of relaxing and having a good time and the idea of abusing somebody is a thin line, and that's what this money grants you, and that's what these people with money are they've done it on a much higher level than the old grandpa offering $40 to some cute chick. I'm not saying it's acceptable, but I'm saying these people are doing a lot of crazy shit. And how, like I said, look at how many madams there are. Look at how, like they're like Pez dispensers. Once one person does something, another person replaces them. These people, it has an endless supply of people to supply these bodies. That's where this issue comes. That's what the whole problem is. It's sick.
So going back to money, PayPal is being sued by 3 people right now for withholding their funds. And this is another form of shadow banning. So apparently, in this case, somebody did something that was distasteful to PayPal, and therefore they did not have access to their money. And I'm like, well, you're just an intermediary, and you didn't make the money. So the money is still mine, so I should still have access to it. If anything, you should just say, here, you have 30 days to collect your funds out of this account. We are shutting your account down. Don't just turn my shit off and like, you can't have your fucking money. That money's mine. I worked for that.
I earned it. Yeah, I earned that.
But they're taking the private sector is taking their cues from the government. And where the FBI will shut down bank accounts of people who commit known criminal activity, okay, that's the government. That makes sense for them to do that. But for a private entity to shut off access to your funds, no. That's a bridge too far, man.
Look, the whole thing is, yeah, I think a big problem that we don't get is that we watch so much television and we consume so much of this bullshit that all it's doing is preparing us for when this shit happens to us, and then we actually believe that, oh, ain't nothing I can do. You understand what I'm saying? Like we watch this shit. We watch Law and Order, and everybody thinks they're a lawyer. They think they get the shit. It ain't like that. It's way more. There's way more stuff involved.
Right. Yeah. So apparently there's 3 people in this lawsuit, and it said they're proposing a class action lawsuit on behalf of all other users who've had their accounts frozen before and are seeking restitution as well as punitive and exemplary damages. Yeah. Let's see.
I'm gonna give an example. I remember watching, I don't know if it's 2021, these news shows. There was a stripper driving across the Midwest. She had went down to Miami, made a shitload of money, like $150,000, $300,000, $250,000. It's her money. She did not break a law. No drugs, no nothing. She's driving back. She gets stopped like someplace like Utah, someplace weird in the middle of America, and a cop seizes her money because you have over 30,000. Now, she had to spend like 10, 15, 20, 30,000 to get her money back. She had to petition it, get a lawyer to do this paperwork. But she did not break a law. There was nothing there. She obviously didn't have no drugs on her. We don't know what she did to get it. She said she was stripping. We got to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing there for them to seize her money, but the government can seize your money. And people don't understand that. They very rarely had this conversation. When you go in and out the country, you only can take how much with you?
10,000.
Mr. Roscoe? 10,000. That's it. And, people don't realize that little bar in there, that's literally for them to scan. When you walk through, you're in the airport, they're scanning you constantly. So if you were to have more than 10,000 and you're going outside this country, you will get stopped. So that also goes back to the conversation we had a couple podcasts ago when we were talking about Bitcoin and crypto. Bitcoin and crypto is not what you think it is, but the bottom line, one thing it does is if you're trying to move a large amount of money to another country, it gives anybody the ability to do that. And that's what these companies are doing. And so people don't realize that sometimes Bitcoin was started to do illegal shit. And so people could do illegal shit and not be traced. This goes back to the drugs. This goes back to the sex slaves. This goes back to all that stuff. And that was the purpose of crypto, of the initial Bitcoin. Yeah, everybody jumped in. It was cool, but there's other shit attached to it that people are delivering money, and you can't trace that shit.
Dude, check this out. So this guy, one of the plaintiffs, he had $172,000 seized by PayPal without giving him any explanation why the account got limited in the first place. So he and his wife have a company, and they sell these pins that inject filler into the skin, right, for cosmetic purposes, right, kind of like Botox. So the money disappeared from the account following a 6-month freeze, and PayPal then sent his wife a letter that says they violated PayPal's user agreement. Dude. So there's another guy. He's a poker player. And they took $12,000 of his money from his account after 6 months of being limited. Yeah. It's crazy, man.
What we're saying is these private companies, these large private companies, are acting like they're governments. They're acting like they have jurisdiction in places they don't. And we use them and we trust them. And like I said, it's kind of is hypocritical the way they behave behind closed doors. But the bottom line is that they think they have jurisdiction. They think they have the right to do this. Also, what we've been telling people for years is the reason you start a business. It's one thing to start a business to make money. That's the given. But so many of these people are starting businesses to protect themselves because the LLC gives them limited liability. It protects them from all this shit going on around them. It protects them from, if something happens with me, you can't take my property. We also talked about how these large heads of these companies, they're all funny. They retire at 43. They're retired and they invest all their money in an insurance policy where they're their own bank. And they don't. Jeff Bezos only makes $250,000 a year. Yeah, we know that. That's the hustle. So, but if you ever notice, they get upset when we do that. When we do what they do, when we get an insurance policy and we put all our money in it and we borrow against our own money, we become the bank. That kind of shit. When you start doing that shit, you will all of a sudden get arrested for jaywalking. You will all of a sudden get in trouble because you didn't pay your dues. You didn't go through the right people. You didn't. You don't have the right last name. All the while they're doing evil shit behind closed doors, but they'll arrest you for weed, put you away for 30 years.
Once upon a time, a tree would fall in the forest and nobody knew if it made a sound or not. Now there are trail cams. There's satellite footage. There's random people just hiking. You got Karens. You have everything going on in the woods now to make it damn near impossible to get some peace and quiet. The point I'm making is that forest is an analogy for the world and how you can no longer be a passive observer in life. You have to pick up your droppings behind you. Everything you do is tracked somehow. You can no longer be a passive observer because you have to be cognizant of everything you're doing, where you're standing, where your car is parked, what you're eating. Do you have receipts for what you're doing? Are there cameras looking at you when you went into this building, where you're standing on the side of this building taking a piss? All these things are being monitored. So what we're talking about now is that awareness has grown. With the increased surveillance of everything, awareness has grown. So to keep pace with this, your awareness must grow to expand to include all the things that are watching you. By this, I'm saying you have to be mindful of who's watching you, because that can be used against you in ways of manipulation that you never could have imagined.
Look, how many people are fired because of social media now? Like I said, I can't talk about personal experience because I'm of my position, but trust me, several people have been fired because of posts on social media. You call in sick, but then all of a sudden you're on vacation someplace. Right now, the big thing right now, how many people are quarantined or say they got COVID? They're off 10 days, but if you look at their Facebook, if you look at their Instagram, they living it up someplace else.
That's a perfect example. Man, you can't get caught slipping no more.
But here's back to these evil people, these evil overlords that we're talking about. funny. They have a whole crew to film them doing some baby stuff. Like, hey, I'm over here and we're helping these kids, these underprivileged children doing this. But when in their private life, there ain't no camera on them. Their cell phone ain't on. They have the ability to shut shit off. They don't have the trackers in their vehicles. Like literally Tesla, his car, I'm sure his car is not going to track him. But what I'm saying is, but it's good for you, but it's not good for them. That's the thing. You're not busting them the same way we're getting busted doing shit. Like I said, the social media seems like entertainment, but it's a way for government to monitor you without having to violate any kind of court or without having to get a court order. And this goes back to what I was telling people before. People don't realize how much of the government owns stock in Google, in YouTube, and things like that. We all know TikTok is the Chinese government. One of the conversations we had off the air, I'm a nerd, and we had this conversation, but everybody knows it, but I had just found out about it. There was a rush of all these cheap Chinese drones. The drones are expensive. Drones were anywhere from $200, $300, $400, thousands of dollars, right? But all of a sudden, China started producing them for way cheaper, and they were sending them over here. And it was crazy for the drone market. Anybody can have a drone now, like an expensive drone does all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
but there's a back door in those drones, though.
Yes. There's a point to this conversation. These Chinese drones literally would hook up to the internet.
They're calling home all the time.
Sending your info. And so on a personal level, there's an Amazon store. So I go there, and there's a drone for sale for $5. It's for a kid. This thing has a VR mat. This drone literally costs
VR headset.
Yes, it costs like $150 to $200. It's a kid.
The VR headset alone is like $200 easy.
Some crazy, but like I said, our desire to have goods and things we like, sometimes we don't think shit through. I got caught up one time in a car scam, and you know about that. My desire was to have a cheap luxury car, but it was no common sense there. If a drone costs $500 to make, why are they selling it at a loss? Because it's not a loss. The information they receive from that drone is
worth so much more. It's like these free phones. These free phones, they used to call them the Obama phones, because from like 2012 up until 2016, you would see all these homeless people in Atlanta with phones. Like all of a sudden, all these homeless motherfuckers had phones, and I'm like, where are these homeless people getting these phones from? These dudes like the Obama phones, man. And I'm like, I said, hold on, they get them for free? And they're like, yes. I'm like, those phones ain't free, man.
Hey, but people forget that program actually went back to Reagan. It was some kind of weird program that was started many years ago that it wasn't a cell phone. It was for you to have phone service. And the program just kept evolving until you can get a free cell phone. Until your phone was
in your pocket.
Yeah. And so that's crazy, but that's funny as hell. You're like, literally, you got people homeless, got a cell phone, they texting you.
No, these motherfuckers are homeless and watching porn on their fucking phone. And I'm like, hold up, man. You ain't got a fucking house, but you worried about how you can get on fucking like you porn and fucking watch.
Hey man, that was one of the funniest jokes DC Curry had said at the time. He said, hey, dude, hitting the bub, a homeless guy said, hey, you got some change? Like, nah, man, I ain't got no money. He said, man, you got to show a. He said, man, my show a cable. How the hell you homeless? You know who I am. You should know who I am. And so that's a real thing, is that everybody knows everybody now. But it's not because of camaraderie or love. It's because of this technology.
Access.
Yes. It's like I said, we're trying to get people to wake up. Like, if it's too good to be true, like I said, I got taken. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Why the fuck are you, why the fuck do you need a $1,200 phone? Now, look, I shouldn't say that because I don't want to be restrictive. You can buy whatever you can afford. But what I'm saying is that when that contract is a 5-year contract, and the phone's only working for 3.5 years. What I'm saying is that you spend all that money, and you're basically giving them access to your life. You're giving them, people get mad when you say, like, hey, you do realize there's a chip in that, or there's this. Well, this cell phone right here gives them the ability to track me wherever I go. So you're bragging about that? That's like bragging about, oral sex that you didn't expect. Oh, got hit in the mouth with a dick. Just come on. you're bragging about the wrong thing. Yeah, that is true, but that's your complacency in the situation. You feel so powerless, and you brag about your lack of power. You're so, I don't want to use the word weak because weak's not the word, but you're so defenseless that you brag about getting fucked over. That is a black trait that I've been fighting for years. Sometimes I catch myself submitting to shit. Like when people, you ever give somebody advice and they don't want to take it because it's good advice. But the truth is, I'm telling you something I lived through. I'm not talking shit. I'm like, sometimes I still get like, hey, you ever been scared to buy a pineapple? Like, because, you didn't grow up in the house with pineapples. I'm like, shit, this is delicious. So the first couple of times I would look at the pineapple, I had to work up to buying it. I had to actually go like, this is some shit. I didn't grow up with that fruit. What do I do? So I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Like, literally, you have situations where you kind of fuck with yourself or you talk yourself out of doing shit. And that's how this shit is. This subtle hands, this shadow banning, literally will have you scared to speak your piece, to speak the truth. Now, there's some crazy motherfuckers out there you don't need to give a format to. I get it. But that's not here nor there. What it is that the average person right now will not be honest with you anymore because they don't want to lose their job. They won't be honest with you anymore because they don't want to not be able to post on Facebook for a month. I be in Facebook jail all the time, nigga. I Facebook jail all the time. But that's that subtle shit we've been talking about years ago that China was doing. Having a social report card, and if you're not doing this properly, you get docked these points. And we make fun of China because their government's doing it. Our government would never do that. They don't have to. You're submitting yourself to it. You're doing it yourself by literally craving this technology and these phones and all this other shit. You're actually, every time you want to open up a new game, you got to click accept the rules and regulations. You don't read that shit. I don't read that shit. It's just 10 fucking pages. You don't know what the fuck.
Listen. This instant gratification, this endless itch that could never be scratched. It's to use the Garden of Eden analogy. It's endless apples to bite.
There's always something.
I'll tell you like this. There are invisible hands that want to keep you from speaking. All right? They want to put their hand over your mouth. They want to put their hand over your eyes to keep you from seeing. They want to put their hands over your ears to keep you from hearing what you need to be hearing, the truth. All right?
Living in fear.
But you cannot live in fear. But you also have to be proactive and stop giving your agency, your power over to somebody else and act on the evil when you see it. It starts on small levels. It can be something as small as like clapping back at these social media, platforms. So, no, you got the story wrong. This is what happened, not what you think happened. And you need to check your algorithms or your CCM people and tell them, hey, you've got it wrong. So either you reinstate my account or we can take this further. Or better yet, I'm just done with you because this is complete bullshit. And I'm going to tell people how your felonious ways are not attractive towards anything productive. And I'm going to steer people away from what you're doing. And I'm going to move on. The whole point is that, look, you have to move on. You have to basically, like we said, take your time and energy and invest it in yourself and in your family and in things that will grow and make your life better. All right? That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.